Guys, wouldn't your wife or girlfriend love it if you treated her to the very best this Christmas? Now you can, with the world's softest pajamas by Pajamagram. Created by a team of pajama experts, the world's softest PJs are lighter than a cloud, softer than a bunny, like cashmere, only better. She'll love how heavenly they feel. Includes free gift packaging and Christmas delivery is guaranteed. So visit pajamagram.com or call 1-800-GIVE-PJs.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
Lane Kiffin going to join us in an hour. He says things.
He does.
I want to get into some of the things happening with football right now because it really is a marvel if you could step back and disattach and just view it as performance art. The idea that Vontaze Burfict, as bad a man as we have in the sport, notoriously dirty player, I've seen all week and just saw moments ago the video of him knocked unconscious with a hit that didn't used to be illegal but is illegal now. And did you guys notice, or did the cameras move away? But even though he's knocked out, he seems to still want to kind of be fighting, but he's not mentally there. So Vontaze Burfict is basically like the undead. It was like watching a zombie movie where the torso's still alive. Because he was groggy, but he turned over. He's unconscious or close to unconscious. Obviously not totally unconscious, right, but he's clearly not all there. And in his grogginess, he's still starting to fight. He's still trying to fight. It's like when you fight Mick Cronin.
Yes, I mean the fight's never over when you're fighting Mick Cronin.
He was out on his feet like a boxer.
Except he wasn't on his feet. He was on
trying
his back.
to get there.
But it reminded me of Bishop, Sigourney Weaver's friend in Alien, that gets sliced in half and just has entrails and he's still fighting the alien. Like that was perfect. And so I'm watching all this, and in the middle of it, like in the middle of that, okay, all of what that is, Roger Goodell, $40 million extension.
Yep.
And so the symbolism of it to me is great because you can't argue that the league is better off today than it was the last time Goodell signed one of these.
It'd be impossible to argue that, although towards the end of this first contract, maybe it's declined a bit, right? The last couple of years. But the league's in a better place overall.
No,
yes.
Is the league better than it was 6 years ago? Yes or no?
Yes.
No.
You don't think the league's in a better place 6 years from the day he took over?
No,
you don't think there's more revenues coming in?
The league is not in a better place today than it was 6 years ago. How can you argue that it's in a better place today? It was at the height of its power 6 years ago without the scandals, without the concussions, without the violence, without any of the issues. It was just money, glory, purity, without the anthem protests.
Right. I think we're having a slight miscommunication here. What I said is over the body of the 6 years, I feel like the NFL's in a better place. The last 2 years, maybe you would think it's going the other way.
I don't believe that you can argue that Roger Goodell deserves a pay raise based on him doing his job in a way that leaves the league better off than when he started doing it. Like that, or the last time he signed one of these. Like he just got an enormous raise. Regardless, I think it's funny that all of it is happening in real time on your screens because one of the things that's interesting about this is the NFL is relentlessly good content. We're grateful for the NFL around here. You guys, the audience loves the NFL. Everybody's ratings are better during the NFL season. All of us, across the board, on television here. They're an endless source of rich content. But what I wonder in private is when Roger Goodell is talking to these guys, does he elbow the other owners and go, like, watch what's happening this week in the news stream? Does he elbow them and isn't this great? Or is he wringing his hands, clutching rosary beads? This is so wrong that I've got these hits in my league. What is he doing behind the scenes? Because they keep selling us the NFL as something pure. They keep wanting from the patriotism to all of it. It's a pure thing. When I keep telling you, no, it's not. No, it's about as dirty as anything we've got in outside of porn, in entertainment. It's dirt. All of it's dirty. And so you got the frustration in the middle of it of Mike Mitchell. Now, I don't think many people know who this human being is on sight, okay? But he became the voice for something yesterday. In the middle of all of this insanity, Goodell signing an extension, the Bengals and the Steelers played the most brutal, violent game we've seen all season, which used to be something we'd celebrate. And now, because we've evolved and the science has caught up, we're like, ooh, that's disturbing. But here's Mike Mitchell. And it's hard to argue with much of anything he's saying.
At the end of the day, this is football. If you want to see flag football, then let's take our pads off. That would make it easier for me, because now I don't got to wear heavy shit. But give us flags for me to pull off, because that way I know what we're playing. You know, I signed up to play full-speed contact football, and we're not doing that. I feel like I got to ask a guy, hey, are you ready for me to hit you right now before I hit you? And that's crazy. I'm going to mess around and get hurt trying to protect an offensive player because he's running an over route. Damn it, your quarterback shouldn't have threw that ball messed up. That happened 2 years ago. I'm not joking at all. Andy Dalton threw a ball to Tyler Eifert 2 years ago. Tyler Eifert had to dive for it. I was aiming for his gut. But if he don't dive, he don't get in the head. That's $50,000 out of my pocket, though, because Andy throws a bad ball. Make that make sense. And at first you're taking our money, but now, I got like Matt Hasselbeck calling me a dirty player and trying my character, and we've never met before. I donate more money to Cincinnati underprivileged kids than probably people on the Bengals. So don't give me that name. My nephew goes to school there, man. I take all that personally. If you don't know me, if you never had a conversation with me, don't judge us by what you see on football, because football is my competitive side. You know what I'm saying? So it's just so much going on in the game right now. Yes, obviously I'm a little flustered, but I mean, we just got to do better. We got to do better. I said it yesterday. We got to do better as players when we sign the next CBA. We got to get better leadership as who's running the league, because obviously everybody from fans, owners, players are all disappointed in Roger Goodell. We just got to do better. We can't have a guy where you just hand out discipline on how you see fit. There needs to be a set guideline of how we do what we do.
How could you disagree with any of that? Andy does throw a bad ball.
Well, I think Matt Hasselbeck might agree with something in there. Garen, put it on the poll at Le Batard Show. Who is right? Mike Mitchell or Hasselbeck? Like, has anyone got comment from Hasselbeck on Mike Mitchell calling him a bleep hole? Let's be the first to get comment from Hasselbeck.
All right.
I just loved all of that, and it's sort of where the league is. Here's where it is, Stugotz, and it's one of the things that's fascinating to me. They're never going to make it safe. I don't think they're even going to make it safer. Like, they're trying to make it safer.
Right.
But I think what they're actually doing is making it look like it's safer, because what Shazier experienced could have happened at any time in the history of football.
Right.
And so
they are teaching tackling techniques differently than they used to do.
But yes, agreed. Right. But I don't think that you can make violence safe. I think all you can aspire to is to make it safer, and you're going to fail. Like, they're going to keep trying to make this safer, but the human beings are too large. Did you see what happened with Herm Edwards yesterday, where he goes to Arizona State and he's looking at the uniform, and he's wondering while he looks at the uniform, Stugotz, because he comes from a man's league. He's listen to this sound here. Listen to this sound. Courtesy of Sun Devil Athletics. Be careful with those devils. I'm a Christian.
The girls.
No, this is a game jersey. See how tight it is?
Tight.
Yeah, you can't.
What? You're not expected to put it on, man.
No. You're just gonna put on a mannequin in there.
This is a game jersey?
Yeah.
Bro, that's tight.
Technology, they don't have belts anymore. That's how tight they are.
You know, the technology, man, that thing stretches out, man, and then gets real tight, but it's crazy, isn't it?
That's nice. That was a girl.
That was a girl. That little kid's jersey.
I thought it was a girl's jersey.
I love people bringing Herm up to speed on what football's like today.
Well, I'm torn here on what are we going to do. Hold on a second. What are we going to do? You got Ben McAdoo. He's gone. His career's over. We can't make fun of him anymore. Jim Tomsula is, defensive line coach, which is where he should have always been. But thank you for coming out into the light and celebrating life with us with that great mustache of yours. But he's gone now, and so we need a new applicant for the throne. And so I think right now our best nominees are Herm Edwards. How about Doug Marrone? Doug Marrone, the Jacksonville coach, he's making a strong push here because Doug Marrone he seems odd.
I don't know if when they looked at it, they said, well, let's send him down to bologna to match his weight. And then I'd be offense to that, about 350. But I'd probably eat more bologna than anybody else in the world, though. I would say that. Who's my age?
Yeah, put it on the poll. Does Doug Marrone eat more bologna than anyone else in the world who's his age?
Bologna.
Don Le Batard.
Stugotz lies so much, and he doesn't take inventory of his lies, that even when he's telling the truth, we don't believe him on anything. What's wrong, Stugotz? What are you objecting to?
I mean, listen, I've done this to myself, so I'm frustrated at myself. I'm not going to lash out elsewhere because I understand why everyone would think that I was the one who did this. But I am sitting here telling you guys that I did not do it.
Stugotz.
You absolutely took a bite out of a piece of pizza and put it back with the rest of the pizza.
It was me.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Something interesting I thought about, Stugotz, as it came to the Gronk suspension, because it doesn't really make any sense. If you're watching that Bengals-Steelers game, the reason the two guys got a game suspension there was because another dude in a different time in the game looked like he was paralyzed.
It was a violent game.
So it's how things look. It was a primetime game. It was a violent game. They didn't like how any of it looked, so they suspend a couple of guys for one game for doing football things. But I wonder this one, because you cannot argue that what Gronk did was the same or less than what happened on Monday night. What Gronk did was illegal and dirty by any standard in the history of the sport. That what Gronk did in giving that dude a concussion at that size and weight when he was prone and had his back to him is as dirty and cowardly as anything you've ever seen in the history of the sport.
Yep.
And so they gave him a game as well. And it made me wonder if they did that because the league can't look like, because it's compromised, it's again doing exaggerated things to the Patriots. That the league has botched things with the Patriots enough that they can't come down on Gronk excessively, even though what Gronk did was clearly excessive by any standard in the history of the sport.
So they're actually processing that. Hey, and is that a discussion that happens in league headquarters? Hey, we've been really harsh on the Patriots.
That's the question I'm asking you.
Let's just give them a game on this, even though it was terrible.
One game will allow everything. Again, this gets back to, I'm not sure if this league cares as much about how things are as this league cares about how things look.
Sure. I went to that's a fair place to go, and I'm not certain if it's right or not. No one is, obviously. I went to a conspiracy theory thought where, hey, we got this big Patriots-Steelers game coming up in 2 weeks. It's a primetime game, and we don't want Gronk to be out for that game.
Another one. But this is all this stuff, right? All this stuff that I wish we could get in 100% undistilled purity. Arthur Blank said of the Goodell negotiations, well, those were transparent, weren't they? Most transparent transaction in the history of the league. Man, I'd love for all their transactions to be that way.
Yes.
I would watch a show.
Yes.
I would watch a show on ESPN, an infraction show, where a bunch of guys are in a room deciding how these fines are actually sent out with honesty, though. How these fines and how this discipline comes down with honesty, where you hear in the background, can we really do this to the Patriots again? Can we hit Gronk with one of these symbol penalties that's going to make that entire fan base, which is already wearing to games that Barstool Roger Goodell clown nose T-shirt that even their defensive coordinator, Patricia, wears, even though he's a fraud with that pencil behind his ear and a laminated play sheet that wouldn't use a pencil.
Since they're making these punishments up as
You're laughing at your own joke there. I stole it from you.
I know you did. It's still funny. It doesn't matter, and you can have it.
Since they're making up these punishments as they go along, what I kind of thought happened with the Gronk thing was just the order of how it happened. They sort of played themselves because Gronk happened on a Sunday, the punishment was announced on a Monday, and then the Monday Nighter happened, and you can't give those guys 0 games for what happened, and you realize, shoot, if it were the other way around, we'd give Gronk 2.
Mike, I'm not kidding you that I would not have a problem with Gronk being charged for assault.
It was bad, man.
Like they do that sometimes in hockey when a guy is wielding a stick. They talk about pressing charges. Like, I'm telling you that what we saw Monday night might be, to everyone's new sensibilities and delicate sensibilities, now that we have science and information and all of us can evolve and understand the pain of the game. What you saw on Monday night was football in its purest form, how you fell in love with it.
Yep.
That's what you witnessed on Monday night. And now it's being penalized when it used to be celebrated. What Gronk did on Sunday has never been celebrated by anyone at any time. It's never been fair. It's never been legal. It was nothing but the dirtiest thing that brain concussed somebody in a way that caused trauma to their head and left them woozy.
He jumped him. If that happened in an alley,
absolutely
he
did.
mugged him.
It was bad. Are you saying that would have been celebrated back in the 80s,
no,
90s?
I'm saying the opposite. I'm
Right,
saying the
anytime?
Monday night game is something that would have been celebrated any
Correct.
time that we've been watching football except for now.
Right.
What Gronk did is that would have never been on a big hits video.
No.
That never would have been sold on Jacked Up segment. Like nobody would have celebrated that. Hell, you guys all think I'm a player apologist, always defending the behavior of the players at every time and extending excuse and empathy at every turn, always telling you, well, rage doesn't work considering consequences. A rageful act. That was a temper tantrum by a polar bear. That's all it was. When you think, this is what makes it all the worse, when you think of his reasons for it, at least the plays you saw on Monday night were football plays. Gronk hit that dude that way because the guy pushed off to intercept the ball from him.
Right, because he's never gotten a call before. But the second he doesn't get a call, that's how he reacts.
What I'm saying is, like, it had the fact that the league just gave him the same penalty that it gives everyone else. I would love to know if there were, like, if we could have transparency in the NFL would never give it to you. But what I'm saying to you, my general overall thought on this entire spectacle of football is that if they embrace the dirty, and we're more honest about all of this, they could be a rebellious league that's dangerous, and I think we'd enjoy it more.
I'm certain we'd enjoy it more.
But I'm not sure if that's their customer base, because their customer base wants these players standing. Like the customer base treats this thing as sacred, even though I think this is Mad Max, man. Like, I think the football Sundays are Mad Max. It's the apocalypse. It's the apocalypse.
But you think there's been a shift in what the customer base wants, because there was a time not too long ago where and I still believe we're in that time where the customer base wants big hits. They want everyone to stand up, but they want to see big hits.
I just think it's a conflicting time in that sport, man, where they're at odds with who they are and who they want to be perceived as. Like, and these penalties, I'm telling you, Stugotz, that's a weird situation to have when you're not penalizing what things are. You're penalizing how they will look.
Right.
Say hello to my little friend.
Everything about Monday was optics, Stugotz. Everything. It wasn't about safety. It was about optics.
It was. You're right. Start to finish. It was just, there were a lot of injuries and obviously a really, really bad one, and it was a chippy, dirty game. But if that Bills player does that to Tom Brady, he's out for the season, is he not? And that's what makes it hard, man. It does. That's what makes it difficult to sift through. Because if he does that to Brady, he's done for the year.
I told you already, a congressional hearing. Democratic law would fall. If someone did that to Brady, the rules of our country would change.
Dan Le Batard.
Do you go to the supermarket at all, Dan?
I do. I go to, yes, I do.
Whole Foods or something? That'd be better.
I have a lot of difficulty picturing Dan pushing a shopping cart.
Yeah, he's a handbasket guy.
Stugotz.
No way it's a cart.
Yeah,
no.
There's no way it's a cart.
I'd be so shocked. I'd be less shocked if Dan was riding a burro.
No, if he goes shopping cart, he's at the front of it pulling it, not at the back of it.
Really?
If he's doing it, it's not the traditional
right.
way.
He's not two hands. He's not two hands on the handle.
Yeah, he's in front of it and he's dragging it behind him.
Yeah, as he's picking out stuff. Yeah.
I have Mike pushing the cart and Dan just going down the aisle.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. The Dan Le Batard Show is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Guest on the Dan Le Batard Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Lane Kiffin will be there in a half hour, 11 a.m. Eastern. Here's your SportsCenter update. Roger Goodell has signed a 5-year contract extension to remain the commissioner of the NFL. It's worth $200 million. The University of Tennessee is finalizing a deal with Alabama defensive coordinator Jeremy Pruitt. And finally, in ancient Greece, tossing an apple to a girl was a traditional proposal of marriage. Catching it meant she accepted. What if she drops it?
Did you just make it aging Greece instead of...
I said ancient.
Did you? Okay.
I'm pretty certain I did.
Okay.
Ancient.
Okay, no problem.
That's not one of those words I struggle with.
Okay.
I could have said it that way, though. I have no idea. Ancient. I don't know. We'll play it back. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to the Sports Center on ESPN Radio all throughout the day. What if she... Think about that. You toss her an apple because you want to marry that person, and she wants to marry you, but she drops the apple. What happens there?
Gotta go get a less clumsy partner.
Oh.
Better receiver.
How about the 5-second rule, though?
Oh, you could just pick it up. Well, yeah, if there's 5-second rule, then it's no problem. So Lane Kiffin's going to join us in a half hour here. And Lane Kiffin, the last time he was on with us, said stuff. Somebody is writing in here. I'm wondering what Dan's response would be if a Gronk-type hit happened to Aaron Rodgers. Well, first of all, first thing, I'll take you through this exactly how this would happen. Okay? Because I'd be like Mick Cronin. I'd keep fighting long after my own death. But this is what would happen.
The fight's never over when you're fighting.
Thank you, Stugotz. That silence there was me waiting for that.
Well, I thought you had it. I mean, I thought you had the line by now. I've only said it 5 times. That's on me. I'm blaming you. And you know what? It's a fine.
It's fault that we were just sitting here staring at you, waiting for the line, and then you just...
you're right.
And you were lost in thoughts, like you were chewing your tongue. You were doing something on your computer. You weren't paying attention to the show.
I split my tongue right down the middle. It really hurts. And perhaps that's why I said ancient wrong. But let me see if I have some money, because I lashed out at you. I owe you some money. I don't have any today. I have no money today. Just spot me $1 if you don't mind.
Didn't pull out.
You probably owe 10 from yesterday.
Did we agree that the fine is double if we reach into your pockets? Yes. All right, that is now, we've agreed to that. The fine is now double if you say that you don't have money and then we reach into your pocket and find cash.
Oh, I just found.
There's cash there. I just saw cash there.
Yeah. Hold on a sec.
There's 2.
Oh, luckily there's 2. All right.
All right. So very good.
Paid up.
All right.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, Lane Kiffin's going to join us in a half hour. Lane Kiffin was already on with us, and here's some of what Lane Kiffin had to say last time he was on with us.
Friday night meetings, which are usually pretty casual, they're at the hotel the night before the game, so you have offensive, defensive meetings, you're in separate rooms, and you have the players, and you just go over some plays and show them the film and, talk about the game the next day. They're in sweats, and I had a hat on. Well, I didn't know, that you weren't supposed to wear a hat in a meeting. I mean, I never heard of that. So he wasn't very happy that when I walked out of the meeting, he saw that I was wearing a hat. So he didn't like that. So I didn't get to wear a hat anymore.
So how does that conversation go?
That I can't say, especially because the lady you had on before said, make sure you know this is live. So you can't say anything.
Well, all right, can you bleep it out? Just use bleeps where you would use the word.
Yeah, use bleeps.
It would be rated R.
Well, use bleeps where the curses are.
Use bleeps where the curses are. Don't say any of the curses.
You won't understand it because I'd be like 9 out of the 10 words.
So Nick Saban told him to take his hat off during a meeting, and he didn't understand how it is or why it mattered that he was wearing a hat in a meeting. It's fairly unprecedented for a guy, not fairly unprecedented, it's unprecedented for a guy before the national championship game, for one of the guys in management to just, go away a week before the national championship. Think about that. It's the national bleeping championship game. Never mind about our offensive coordinator. Just go away. Get out of here.
Right. Shortly after Lane gave us that revelation about Nick Saban, his phone dropped, leading us to suspect that someone wasn't happy with it. But he called back, and he was playful about it.
So Lane Kiffin's with us on ESPN Radio, and I want to continue our conversation.
Sorry we got cut off. I had to take a call from Coach Saban. He was listening to us and didn't like it, so I had to get off. My bad.
I thought it was Florida State.
Yeah.
It was actually Tennessee.
He says stuff.
Does he say stuff because he is at FAU? Do you think Lane Kiffin could be this Lane Kiffin if he was at Alabama?
But he's at maximum Lane Kiffin because of where he is. He's at FAU and trying. Yes, he's maxing out Lane Kiffin, using social media, using the Remora fish on Saban. The best sound from that interview, you guys haven't even played it yet. It's when he's making fun of all the fire that there was in Tennessee when he left the Tennessee program and the things that he remembers. Can you give us the details that you specifically remember about your last night in Tennessee?
Things burning. I remember that. I remember a really big Fletcher Jones Mercedes private jet on a runway and a cop car taking us to it and getting on, and next thing I knew, I was landing in Los Angeles, California with my kids and wife, and we never went back to, like, the house or anything like that. Only went back 2 times when we ended up at Alabama, where we went back there to play road games at Knoxville Stadium to beat them really badly.
That last part. All right, Lane, you got to come on with us more often.
I was trying to score 1 point for everything they burned.
That is him. Just when I say Max Lane Kiffin, he added all that at the end. The question, that's when I realized, okay, we need to get this person on more, because what happened there is I asked him a question about what do you remember? His first answer is things burning, which is just a tremendous answer. But then he could just give you the details, but he's rubbing it in. Private jet, landing in Los Angeles, only visited 2 times, and he won't stop because he can't stop because he's Lane Kiffin. He don't stop and he won't stop.
The Lane train don't stop for anybody.
The Lane train is like one of those silent discos, except it's not silent. It's making fun of everybody.
I'll give you another example of what you're talking about. He was on with us, and you were asking him if he was eating something, and he even took that opportunity to take a shot at one of his former stops.
Are you eating lunch?
There's no doubt he's eating lunch.
What are you eating?
My son just gave me some fruit right here, so I had some pineapple.
Oh, the sign of wealth.
Trying to lose some weight since I'm here in South Florida. I'm not in Alabama anymore.
Right.
Just took out Alabama.
He doesn't care.
You can be fat in Alabama. That's basically what Lane Kiffin said. So he's going to be on with us again in 20 minutes. Do you have yet more sound from him?
I have one more bite because some of the younger listeners might just think of Lane Kiffin as a college football guy, but he was the youngest head coach in NFL history, I believe, and his boss was Kookie Al Davis at the very end of the Al Davis experience, and he had something to say about Al.
Give us as much as you've got on what you remember from that time and the film projector. Mortensen.
Just bad memories. I remember, I think he called me Lance instead of Lane. I think he said that. Lance Kiffin. I think he said, he's a liar.
So great.
I love that he did the Al Davis impersonation. He's a liar.
Dan Le Batard
is saving the best. Yes, maybe no.
Stugotz
is saving the best. Yes, maybe no.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz on ESPN Radio.
Now, I know the easiest thing to do when you hear that Rafael Palmeiro at 53 years old is trying to make a comeback, does not want to go to instructional league, doesn't want to go to an independent league, doesn't want to go to Japan, wants a spring training invite at 53 years old. The easiest thing to do is laugh. But when you start reading some of this stuff by Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, and you see that Palmeiro is really having a hard time with how he left baseball. That stuff, we've talked before about the idea of you lose your identity in your late 30s. An athlete loses his self-worth, who he's always been, he or she has always been. It's just very hard if someone takes your identity like that.
Sure.
And his ended in scandal. This was one of the best baseball hitters we've ever seen.
Oh, without question. An amazing hitter. An amazing baseball player, yes.
I've told you these stories about Rafael Palmeiro and his upbringing. That coincides with Canseco. It does something to get to the roots of steroid use. Gary Smith, one of the greatest sports writers of all time for Sports Illustrated, the joke about him was he'd write these stories, these profound stories that had deep psychological roots. And, it was always something about a boy being lost in a well or something equivalent that happened in his childhood that the entire story can then go from there. Wright Thompson loves to examine father-son relationships. Wright Thompson goes deep in on that kind of stuff. And there's some rich stuff here. What's interesting to you about it?
Just the fact, I read some of these quotes here from Ken's article in The Athletic. I kind of feel bad for him because here he is at 53 years old. We haven't heard from Palmeiro in a long time. And now we're hearing from him, and he has held this down for so long, just how he feels and his exit from baseball, which, let's be honest, is Rafael Palmeiro's fault. No one else's but his own.
He said it was B12 and he left in shame. But the thing that I was tying to psychological roots and steroid use is that Canseco and Palmeiro both tell the same kinds of stories from growing up in Miami high schools, which is that they would be great on a baseball field and their Latin dad would always be demanding more. I've told you the stories. Palmeiro would hit a ball off the wall for a double in high school baseball, and his father would be on the fence screaming at him that if he were a real man, he would have hit it over the fence.
Sure.
Palmeiro, I believe, debuted against Dwight Gooden and went 3 for 4, all of the hits to left field, and his dad called him up in a way that made Palmeiro's wife take the phone away from Rafael and start yelling at his dad because his dad called him up and said if you were a real man, you'd pull the ball over the fence and quit with these slap singles. So anyways, you get to 53 years old, and now he's got his own children.
This is essentially a dad who is not proud that his son has made it to the majors. He wants him to make it to the majors and hit the ball out of the park.
Well, but here's the thing, though, that Canseco and Palmeiro both tell similar stories about their fathers, and I think it's instructive to what it is that ended up happening with those guys, which is they end up going after steroids because it helps give them power.
Right.
And so anyway, the shame of steroids has lifted. A-Rod's dating J-Lo and is now more popular than Jeter.
Mm-hmm.
All of these guys who
Palmeiro wagged a finger at Congress.
I know, but Mark McGwire didn't say anything to Congress, and he now works in baseball. Barry Bonds works in baseball, and his best friend was in a jail and he was federally indicted.
Right.
But
McGwire apologized. Bonds just never came clean. He just kept the lie going and going and going. He didn't admit anything. I mean, there's a way. They handled it in a different way than Palmeiro.
You can't prove it.
Palmeiro insisted he never did it, and then we found out that he did it.
Well, but he said B12.
Yeah. What you're doing with Bonds is technically reckless because you can't prove it. Lord knows the government tried.
Yep.
Regardless, while I know that it is funny and it's easy to laugh at Rafael Palmeiro, and I know I sucked the fun out of this segment, but there is some torture there. There's just a human being in what seems to be a great deal of pain that he's not been able to let go of his past.
No, I think this is interesting because if you look at Palmeiro's career, okay, he started off 3 homers, 12 homers, 14 homers, 8 homers, 8 homers, 14 homers. And if you listen to what Dan just said, that wasn't good enough for his dad. And so he went
Look at the batting averages.
The batting averages are 247, 276, 307, 275, 319. And then he really just starts exploding. It's 26 homers, 37 homers, 39 homers, 39 homers, 38 homers, 43 homers, 47 homers. The average is always right around 300 or higher. I mean, that's an interesting story where if you feel like, hey, I've made it here, but it's not good enough for the guy that I care about most, maybe that pushes you to a place where you do it.
The part that I found most interesting in talking to both of those guys about their relationships with their fathers were they were real stories they were telling that sounded between awful and abusive, and the two of them were profoundly grateful because the both of them confused it with love. The two of them did.
Right.
And And now Rafael Palmeiro at 53 years old is walking the wilderness of sports, still searching.
Right. Well, he wants to prove to people that he could do it without any...
But so while you can laugh at it, and I understand that I just sucked all of the fun out of this story, while you can laugh at it, it just feels like a human being who's still searching for some sort of validation that he hasn't been able to get. And you've basically got a 53-year-old Rafael Palmeiro walking the globe with daddy issues.
Yeah. 2 years ago, he played baseball with the Sugar Land Skeeters. He played one game.
With his son.
Yeah.
With his son. He went 2 for 4. Would have had a double if his hamstrings weren't 52 years old.
2 for 4, RBI.
His hamstrings. He had a double. Well, look, man. Rafael Palmeiro will go 3 for 5 with 3 singles to left field from hospice. I will not argue this. He will go 3 for 5. I don't care who's on the mound.
I'm with you, man. I take him right now as a DH.
Well, I love your idea of surrounding him like Giancarlo Stanton. Would you be down with that? Guillermo, put it on the poll. Giancarlo Stanton just playing with an old-timers team of all-stars that includes Palmeiro and A-Rod.
I'd buy season tickets.